Thank you for your kind introduction, Anne, and thank you for everyone behind this, organizing this conference, and for the opportunity to talk today about Gernika and to talk about Tolkien and how they come together, perhaps in myth. So I pretend to present a brief or introduction to the literary analysis, comparative literary analysis that I have done, and because it's time constraint, I will briefly touch on the three themes that I believe are presented in both the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion when it comes to the White Tree of Gondor. And I would like to see how these three themes presented in the books when it comes to the White Tree are also represented in Gernika Coarbola by Parraguirre in his song dating 1852-53. But finally providing a conclusion. But before that, before I start into the analysis, I would like to briefly touch on Tolkien's own understanding of literature, how this relates to reality, how this relates to reality. So briefly, I think, and this is the premise a little bit of this presentation, is that myth becomes the meeting point of history and the imagination. I did some research on the possibility of Tolkien being directly influenced by the Gernika tree because of the bombing in 1937. And I think it's possible, it's very possible that Tolkien knew about Gernika. I mean, he knew about Gernika, that's for sure. He was a subscriber to the Times, and during the day after and a few days later, the bombing was in all the journals, including the Times, and it was a shock. So Tolkien knew about Gernika, but whether this directly made its way into his writing, that's another question, and I think we cannot know for sure. But that's a little bit secondary, because today we're talking about myth, and we're talking about history, and my conception of myth is one that puts together both history and fiction. And I would like to dwell a little bit on this now. For Tolkien, life could be understood as a tale. He said to the poet Odin, "Each of us is an allegory, embodying in a particular tale and clothed in the garments of time and place, universal truth, and everlasting life." So life is understood as fiction, but not in a way that it's unreal, of course, in a different way. But then history, tales are also understood as history. In The Lord of the Rings, we find it abounds in meta-literary references, and they provide us with an insight into how literature may be connected to our world, or at least there's that suggestion. So Sam, when Frodo and Sam are in Mordor, they're quite desperate, and Sam says the following: "Still, I wonder if we shall ever be put into songs or tales, wherein one, of course, but I mean put into words, told by the fireside or read out of a great big book with red and black letters, yes and yes afterwards. And people will say, 'Let's hear about Frodo and the Ring,' and they'll say, 'Yes, that's one of my favorite stories.' Perhaps we find ourselves reading it today or a few years ago and saying, this is one of my favorite ones, or at least, I love it. And by doing so, we are somehow, their tale has come into our world. And this crisscross of different planes, the literary and the historical, is very central to Tolkien's thought and to Tolkien's own understanding of literature. And I believe, and I would like to, with this I move into the analysis of Gernika, of the White Tree and Gernika, is that this cross happens in myth. Well, I would like to thank also Giuseppe Pessini's book, which will be published now on all this, because it's explored in detail, and I've drawn on his book for Tolkien and the Mystery of Literary Creation, for this bit. So, 1 second. Yeah, the relationship between history and myth is a mysterious one, and I would like to explore this now in the Tree of Gernika and the White Tree of Gondor. So, the Tree of Gondor. Let's delve into the Tree of Gondor. Elrond, the elven character, states in the Council, that wears his name, the Council of Elrond, "In the south, the realm of Gondor long endured, and for a while its splendor grew, recalling somewhat of the might of Númenor, ere it fell. Westward, at the feet of the White Mountains, Minas Anor they made, tower of the setting sun." This bit is the one that's important to us. "There, in the courts of the king, grew a white tree. From the seed of that tree, which Isildur brought over the deep waters, and the seed of that tree before came from Eresia, and before that out of the uttermost west in the day before days, when the world was young." So we have this tree, a very important tree in the books, and there are three things that I would like to highlight and then explore. The first one is the origins of this tree, and more precisely, the divine origins of this tree. Out of the uttermost west in the day before days, we have said that this tree has its origins. Second one is the socio-political representation or representative value that the tree has as it grows in the courts of the king. And finally, the survival of this tree to presumably something that happened with Isildur. And spoiler, it's the drowning of Númenor. But the tree is said to, a seed of that tree is said to have been brought over, so somehow escaped that disaster. So let's just start with the first theme, which is divine ancestry. So the reference, as I said, to the uttermost west in the day before days is very important. It infers the tree of a divine ancestry, right? Why that? Well, that time is referring to Valinor, and Valinor in Tolkien's Legendarium, in Tolkien's books, is the land of the gods. Here I have a little picture. But it's not just that. It's just the origins are, this tree was not literally in that land, but a forefather of this tree. It was an ancestor. And that ancestor is called Telperion. And along with Laurelin, they form a beautiful and unique tree couple. You want to read the story a little bit, it's found in the Silmarillion. And these two trees were planted by a goddess whose name is Yavanna. So it's not that just the tree has its origins in this primeval time. It's just that they are it's the descendant of a tree planted by a goddess, but a divine character. And these trees, as you can read there, their light was a divine light that shone on all the mountains and shore of the land of man, which is kind of an Edenic land. Gandalf himself recalls this in a conversation he has with Aragorn at the end of the books. And I don't have the time to go in deep in that conversation, but it's quite critical to this topic. But what Gandalf says to Aragorn is, "Verily, this is a sapling of the line of Nimloth the Fair, and that was a seedling of Galathilion, and that a fruit of Telperion of many names, eldest of trees." So the White Tree of Gondor is a descendant of Telperion who has its origins in an Edenic land called Aman. Now the second point I'd like to touch on is the sociopolitical value that this tree has for within the narratives. In the second book, or the second volume of the books, Frodo and Sam are talking with this character called Faramir, And Faramir, is sad, or though he's hopeful, he reflects on the sad state of his kingdom, because there is no king, and the tree that grows in the court of the king is also withered. It's not flourishing, and so a connection is being made between the political state, the lack of a king, and the lack thereof of a rightful rule over the kingdom, over the land, and the life of a tree. And have the image of a withered tree. It's kind of sick and almost dead. For myself, says Faramir, I will see the white tree in flower again in the courts of the kings, and the silver crown return, and Minas Tirith in peace, Minas Summer again as of old, full of light, high and fair, beautiful as a queen among other queens, not a mistress of many slaves, nay, not even a kind mistress of willing slaves. So again, we find this correlation between the political state of the kingdom and the health of the tree. And finally, I like to talk, before I move into Gernika, we see these three themes represented in the song. I like to mention the survival of this tree to a catastrophe found to the catastrophe of the drowning of Númenor. And in the Calabeth, which is the shortest story that you can find at the end of Silmarillion, you can read how Sauron wants to destroy the king, which is pretty much the core of these people's political, social, but also spiritual well-being. And there we read, and Sauron urged the king to cut down the white tree, Nimrod the Fair, because he knows what this tree represents, that grew in his courts, for it was a memorial of the Eldar and of the light of Valinor. At first the king would not assent to this, since he believed that the fortunes of his house were bound up with the tree. And here also notice how there is this, the image of light comes in the passage, and also the fact that the tree is said to grow in the courts of the king. Well, there's an image of the drowning, but although the whole island, and actually the white tree here referred to is Nimloth, so it's not the white tree of Gondor, it's the white tree of Númenor, is destroyed. There is a fruit of it that Isildur, which we have just read, takes along with other faithful characters, and they take it to the shores of Middle-earth. And so there is the lineage is preserved, and hope, and along it, hope also springs. Now, let's go now into to say that at the end of the books, we find the sapling of this white tree with the return of Aragorn, and this symbolizes, again, the hope I was referring to, the hope of a rightful rule. But let's move now. I don't know how I'm doing with time. Good. Let's move now into Gernika Coarbola. And actually, part of that song, Manta Sabal Su, it's from the poem. It's from the first stanza of the poem. So it was written it was sung in 1852 by José María Parraguirre, and it talks about the Gernika tree, right, that grows in Gernika, in Vizcaya, in the court also of Casa de los Fueros, Bizkaiko Matzarritzea, and there under it the kings of Castile, of Navarre also pledged alliance or swore to respect the local laws of the Basque country known as the Fueros, and also the lords of Biscay would pledge respect to the kings. So it's a symbol, it was a place of parliament, it was a place of democracy. But we're not that much interested, again, with the historical facts. Those are very important because they are the soil of, I believe, of myth to some extent. But we are interested with myth itself and with the representation that the tree has in the song, and then after that, in our minds, in our imaginations, in our collective imagination, both in here but also outside. Just fun note, the poet Wordsworth wrote a poem to the tree of Gernika, tree of holier power. But that's another story. So let's go into the three themes, briefly, in these three themes of the White Tree of Gondor. Let's see them in the Tree of Gernika. The first one is the spiritual roots that the tree has. And there's no way around it. I mean, the Gernika Arbola, it's a religious song. Here I refer to Xavier Zabalza, who in the article Gernika Arbola, an orphan anthem, considers it, as I said, an ultimately religious song. In the first two stanzas, we read, they're translated into English, but I'll read it in Basque. We read Gernika Arbola, da bedinkatua, Euskaldunen artean guztiz maitatua. Mila urte inguru da, esaten dutela, jainkoa jarri zuela Gernikako arbola. So it's not that this is blessed and loved by Basques, but it's also that it has its origins in where? Well, God planted a tree. Where do we find that? Well, we find that in Genesis, as a subtext here, and Genesis 2, where we find the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And apparently also the tree of Gernika. At least that's according to Iparraguirre's song. So the second aspect is I think that's very clear, the representative value that a tree has, the Gernika tree with its own people. And we saw a bit in the historical reasons for that, but we can see it also in the words of the poem. Zaude bada zutika, orain da denbora, eroritzen bazera, arraz galdu gera. Ez zara eroriko, arbola maitea, baldin portatzen bada, bizkaiko juntea. Laurok hartuko dugu zurekin partea, bakian bizi dedin euskaldun jendea. And here the political value of it is very clear. There's the Assembly of Biscay, this political institution that is being referred to, and secondly, the four provinces of Álava, Biscay, and Gipuzkoa and Upper Navarre in Lauro Cartuco de Gu. That's a reference to them. So the oak, emblem of Basque rule, of fueros, it's being here. The oak is here standing as a symbol for this political power and for this political and the health of the tree is also being related to the health, the political vigor of the Basque people in Basque lands. Here is a picture that I think visualizes very well from Gernikako Batzarretzea. And it almost looks like Moses to me, the person under the tree, although it says Lega Sahara, so it's referring to the fueros. But anyway, there it is. Finally, the oak, well, we know well, the bombing of Gernika in 1937. Although and it was an unprecedented moment in history, but the tree survived. And although obviously Iparraguirre didn't know about his words, in the Carlist words of the 19th century resonate powerful. Arbola botatzia dutela pentsatu, Euskal Herri guztian, danok badakigu. Ea bada jendea, denbora orain dugu, erori gabetanik eduki behar dugu. Words that, again, as I said, resonate powerful in the events that will happen in 1937, immortalized in Pablo Picasso's painting here, for example. An unprecedented moment in history, in both Basque, Iberian Peninsula, but also in world history, civilian population becoming the objective of military attack, precedent also to the events in the Second World War. And this gives the Gernika tree makes it supranational, goes beyond borders, and its symbolism of hope. Today, present, we can find saplings of it in different places, going from Auschwitz to Capitol Hill. Here, the political, perhaps, symbolism being reflected, and also the migrant experience of Basques, seen, for example, in California, in this Basque house, Euskal Etxea. I think this line from the poem, Beti ongo sera, udaberekoa, lorien tsinetako manchagabekoa, echoes this hope that the tree today symbolizes. So just to finish, what can we learn from the wisdom of these two trees? I think we've seen those three themes. I think there is a correlation between myth and history. I'm not talking about myths, things that are not true. Although perhaps may not have happened in the case of Gondor, obviously in the case of Gernika we're talking about true myth. Where there is a crisscross of planes and there is a symbiotic, in my opinion, relationship. This allows us to, I think imagination can, and this has a lot of implications. On one hand, history is shaped by your imagination, but also your human imagination is allowed to better apprehend historical realities. I would like to mention how I believe that once the Iparragirre, or the real tree of Gernika enters Iparragirre's poetry, it becomes something else. It ceases to be a plant and starts to become a mythic element capable of suggestion to its recipients, a carrier of meaning beyond its circumscribed physical context. The tree of Gernika, as such, I believe enjoys, in some way, a fellowship with the tree of Gondor, and contemplates with amazement this kinship with Middle-earth. But also the tree of Gondor, I think, in meeting the Oak of Gernika acquires in the mind of the reader, at least those who are familiarized with Gernika, a deeper texture of meaning. Those who know the history of Gernika enrich the tree of Gondor with the memories of their own past, either personal or the ones that they've learned from others. And following talking, I venture to say that these might be, or could this be different leaves of the same tree, Gernika and Gondor, who belong to the tree of tales. And then are we also part of this tree of tales, which draws its strength from history, imagination, human experience, ultimately light. Well, I believe this paper does not strive to confuse fiction with reality. It attempts to rip off the veil that divides history and observable fact from myth and legend, and claims that these two are interconnected and need to be so in order to be complete. Thank you very much.
I was wondering, I'm a science fiction researcher, so I know about fantasy in a very transversal way. But would you say, David, that this image of the tree as, I don't know if it perhaps because of this regeneration cycle with the image of the seeds and how it's been used with the seeds of the tree of Gernika in real life, if this has also shaped somehow the fantasy genre, or because I know this, the image of the tree that defines a nation or a kingdom or something, a place has appeared in other places, or like other novels, TV series, like Natalia was mentioning the Avatar, and that's science fiction, but how it has the tree of the native people of that planet. Yeah, I wanted to know your comments on that.
You mean, in particular, Gernika, the tree of Gernika, or not, or a tree as an archetype in a more not a particular tree.
Yes, I don't know if the tree of Gernika is also implicated in the creation of that image itself, but yes, the general concept of mythologization of that tree.
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, it's so. If I understood correctly, it's in present-day fantasy literature, we find the image of the tree, not necessarily Gernika, but tree having a similar function of hope, of identity for a people. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm sure. Now I don't have examples coming to my mind, but the thing is that this is not something new. I mean, obviously trees have a very important symbolic meaning, and oaks, I mean, it's in the Basque Country, but it's also in England, British oak, and sometimes I've told people in the UK, well, it's not only in the UK that it's important. It's also in other places, Mediterranean cultures, in Roman or Greek, and I'm not sure now, but there's definitely, this is not exclusive thing to Gernika in that sense, or to Tolkien, and it definitely opens the question. If there are, I'm sure, right now I cannot think of, but it's something I think it's something to look into, and it gives the opportunity for any one of us to research that and to look at that. Yeah, trying to think of now, for example, C.S. Lewis, but I don't know. There is a tree. I can't remember. I've read the book some time ago, and I can think of a scene with a garden and a fruit being there very important. And I don't. But yeah, I'm trying to think of something. I don't have something in mind.
Sorry, only a little thing. When you were saying that you didn't have an example about a tree that symbolizes life and hope, I was just thinking about the dry tree of Marco Polo, that symbolizes that when Jesus Christ will come, its leaves will grow again. So I believe that is a parallelism with the tree of Gondor. And that just an example that you were searching, and I just sorry.
Yeah. Could we say then that they are all different leaves of this same tree, and then some of them are in history, others are in stories, in fiction, in myth. I mean, any comparative approach to mythologies will reveal the importance of trees for any culture, and I think it's very interesting how also today this is being represented in, for example, modern fantasy literature, but something that I haven't looked into, but definitely, yeah, there are examples also from the past.